drive out demons. Without cost you have received. Without cost you are to give. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I'd like you to have a seat. So I didn't mention this at the beginning of Mass, but today is Father's Day. And it's one of those things where I'm like, it's not like, how do I say this? I don't often talk about the civic holidays, as part of, it just seemed to fit though. As I was praying with these readings and praying about the fact that today is Father's Day, here's Jesus, and it says, he saw the crowds, right? They were troubled and abandoned. His heart was moved with pity for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And if you know anything about, there's some theories about like the four male archetypes. And so when it comes to men, the four male archetypes are man as the lover, a man as the warrior, man as the sage, and also man as the king. And as the king, we recognize that from the Old Testament, you have David who's the king, but he doesn't start out as a king, he starts out as a shepherd. And then in so many ways, the role of the father is in a family, it's like the role of a shepherd in a family. And so again, don't talk about civic holiday things too often, but just coming back to the role of fathers, like even in fact, we'd say it like this, the need for fathers in our culture, in our families, in our world, there is a real need. We need men. Of course, we need women, we need fathers and mothers. The question is not to diminish one at the raising up of the other, but there's so much confusion in our culture, so much confusion in our world over what is it to be a woman, what is it to be a man. And so we recognize, yes, we absolutely need moms, 100% we need moms. And so moms obviously need to be built up and supported as well. Women need to know what is it to be a woman. Men need to know what it is to be a man, because we need each other. Raising children needs both moms and dads. I was reading something actually. It was a pediatric psychologist who's documenting though that yes, while moms and dads are both essential, they're essential pillars for the healthy and emotional and well-being development of their children, fathers play a unique role. In fact, that for young girls, good fathers offer security and emotional support. In fact, that a good father will show his daughter what a good relationship should look like. So if he's a kind and generous, if he's just, if he's fair, if he's giving, if he's loving, a good father will show his daughter what a good relationship will look like. For boys though, it's interesting, unlike for daughters who they model their relationships with others based off of their father's relationship, young boys will model themselves after their father. The role of a father is just so important. Why is that important? Because we should want our boys to become as strong as possible. Let's just say it like that. We should want our young boys to become as strong as possible. Yes, our young women too. But when it comes to the idea of like, okay, wait, you want your boys to be as strong as possible, you want your men to be as strong as possible, isn't that dangerous? Because it brings up terms like, I'm sure a term that we've heard in the last number of years, term toxic masculinity. And like, isn't there a danger there that if you want your men in your culture really to be as strong as possible? That seems like a recipe for toxic masculinity. In fact, there's even people who kind of embody this. In fact, I was asking before Mass if any people here had heard of a man named Andrew Tate. You might have heard of Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate, what is he? He is a former MMA star / entrepreneur / influencer / lifestyle guru / alpha male / social media personality. Basically, he talks a lot about being the alpha, right? He talks a lot about like, here's what it is to be an alpha male. And it's almost a parody, it's almost a caricature of life, because the idea that he puts forward as like, here's what it is to be the alpha is you need to drink this kind of whiskey, you need to drive these kinds of cars, you need to smoke these kinds of cigars, you need to date or have sex with these kinds of women. This is the kind of person that you need to be. If you're going to be the alpha, what you need to do, according to Andrew Tate, what you need to do is you need to dominate. Like that's what the alpha does. The alpha, he asked the question, I had to do some research on this. He had the question of, what do you do when you walk into a room? You need to dominate. When you walk into the room, you need to figure out who here in this room is the alpha. And it sounds so much like a parody, sounds so much like a caricature, that it can't even be real, but it is. There's so many young boys, young men, who are saying, that's it. That's what I need to be then. I need to dominate. On the other hand, you have people say, like, I don't want that. That sounds like toxic masculinity. I don't want toxic masculinity. I want the opposite of that. So I looked up in the thesaurus, in the thesaurus, like, what is the opposite of toxic? There's a couple of helpful words, but a couple of the first words that came up when it came to the opposite, the antonym for the word toxic, is the word safe, or the word helpless. I think, are those the only two options? Either you're toxic or you're safe. You're toxic or you're helpless. Either you dominate or you're weak. There's a professor of psychology named Dr. Leonard Sachs. He wrote a book years ago called Boys Adrift. And in it, he diagnosed this same problem. He said, what our culture offers young boys two alternatives, two visions of what it is to be a man. And one is, he called him the slacker dude. The slacker dude is we might call the weakling. He's the passive person. He's not just kind of a nice guy. He's the person who, not only, couldn't hurt a fly, or wouldn't hurt a fly, but he couldn't hurt a fly. Like that kind of person who just they kind of waste their time playing video games, waste their strength, doing nothing much of anything, just kind of just hanging out. That's the slacker dude. That's the safe, right? The harmless. The opposite vision that our world offers is what Dr. Leonard Sachs calls the brute or the bully. We would say that's the toxic masculine man, right? The person who just the tyrant, basically. And so these are the two images that our world gives young men. It says either you can be the weakling or the tyrant. You can either be the slacker dude or you can be the brute, the bully. One is strength that's feared, and so it's unused. Strength that's wasted, it's just not used. The other is strength that's spent on oneself. I'm the tyrant so I can get what I need. I dominate so I can get what I need. I am the brute so I get what I need. And the question is, which image does Jesus put forth for us? What's the image that Jesus wants for human beings, not just for men, but for all of us? And Jesus, you'd think, well, Jesus would probably want the safer one. Jesus would want the gentler one, right? Jesus, at one point, he describes himself, and he says, come to me, for I am meek. In fact, the Beatitudes, Jesus says, blessed are the meek. So we think that maybe that's what it means. Maybe that's the slacker dude. Maybe that's the weak one. But here's the interesting thing. That term meek does not mean weak. In fact, I've heard it described like this, that if you take a stallion, right? If you take a horse, had all the power of the horse, all the strength of the horse, you would have to, you'd meek the horse. And it doesn't mean you make the horse weak. It doesn't mean you take the horse's strength away. It doesn't mean you take the horse's power away. It means that to meek a horse means you harness all of the power, all of the strength. You harness all the potential of that creature, and you bring it under control at the service of others. In fact, that's what it is to meek a horse. You don't take the power away. You harness the power and bring it under control. It's why I always, whenever it comes to what is it to be an adult in our culture, I always come back to this image because we realize we don't have any real clear sense of here is when you become an adult. I mean, is it when you are 16 and you can drive? Is it when you can buy cigarettes or scratchy little lotto tickets at whatever 18 or 21? Is it when you drink? Is it when you go off to college? What's the mark of adulthood? There's no clear mark of adulthood. In fact, I keep going back to this, and I've said it many times. You've probably heard this. Is I look at pictures, photographs, or even movies of young men who went off to war in World War II, and they are younger than some of the men I work with here on campus. And I think, okay, what's the difference? I think the first marker of adulthood, and in this case, we're talking about fathers and fathers, we're talking about men. The first marker of adulthood is a willingness to take responsibility for oneself. That's the first one. Just like a willingness to take responsibility for oneself. I'm no longer under my mom's house, my parents' house. I'm no longer, they're taking care of me. The marker of adulthood, is I'm now willing to take responsibility for myself. And now I say it like this: I'm willing to develop my strength. I'm willing to develop my own competence. I'm taking responsibility for developing my own competence. I'm taking responsibility for developing my own strength. I'm becoming a man. But there's another level. There's another level of adulthood, another level that's just incredible. It takes responsibility for others. And that's the difference between becoming a man, I take responsibility for myself, and becoming a father, becoming a shepherd. I'm willing to take responsibility for someone else. So the first step of becoming a man, becoming an adult, is I'm going to develop my competence. Becoming a father is I'm going to use my competence for others. Is that being alpha? I don't know. That's a good question. Even that term alpha male, you probably have heard this already, but the term alpha male came from some scientists who were studying wolves that were in captivity, essentially. And they noticed that the wolves that kind of dominated, they would call them the alpha. There was an alpha female, an alpha male, and then all the others, beta, and after that. Turns out that in subsequent studies, subsequent research have actually studied primates and wolves and other animals in the wild. And the alpha of the pack, the alpha of the group of primates, of gorillas, or of any other kind of, they weren't the ones who just dominated. They weren't the ones who just took whatever they wanted. It was almost the opposite. The alpha male of the group was the one who took care of the others. The alpha male, actually, in the wild, the alpha male was the one who served, the one who made sure everyone had food, the one who made sure everyone had protection, the one who made sure everyone had shelter. In fact, I remember a psychologist describing this and saying that women aren't attracted. This is for the guys who're like, I want to be alpha. Why? Because I want to be the one who gets the girls. Women aren't attracted to that dominant personality, aren't attracted to the alpha. What they're attracted to is what he called competent generosity. And this is what marked the alpha, the actual alpha, in those groups of primates, those groups of wolves, was competent generosity. Not the slacker dude, and not the brute, but what you might call the shepherd, what you might call the father, who might have to fight. Yes, absolutely might have to fight. But the primary task of the shepherd, the primary task is not fighting. The primary task is taking care of the sheep. The primary task of the father is not going to battle. The primary task of the father is, okay, I have to make sure these people are fed and guided and kept safe and raised. And because of that, you have to know how to fight. Because of that, you have to be willing to fight. But that's merely at the service of the sheep, right? That's merely at the service of those kids. It's not for his own glory or bravado or sense of self. And that's the crazy thing, is because if that's what a man is going to be, again, on this Father's Day, and I know so many of these fathers who you're praying with us today, that is who you aspire to be, then, and maybe you already even are those people, what you're going to face is you're going to face at least three different dangers, three different attacks. And those attacks are being the immature father, the hypocritical father, or the impotent father. We just say it as easily: the immature shepherd, the hypocritical shepherd, or the impotent shepherd. Because the immature, what's the immature father? One of the signs and one of the markers of the immature father is the father who only takes interest in his children as long as they entertain him. Yeah, they love playing with the kids, but as long as their entertainment value runs out, then his interest runs out. Only so long as if they're interested in what the father's interested in, then he'll be interested in them. And I think we all know shepherds like this, right? We all know fathers like this. We all know people like this. And we know their opposite. That's the big danger. That's the big temptation. That's the big trap so many fathers can fall into as immature fathers, is I'm only taking interest in my kids as long as they entertain me, or as long as they're interested in what I am interested in, as long as they serve me. And the mature father has his life is marked with, he easily encourages his kids. The mature father will stand alongside his children. The mature father will discipline his children and show them the way. The mature father will embody the rules that he himself imposes, which is the second danger of trying to be a good shepherd or trying to be a good dad, is the danger of hypocrisy. Right? Because a mature father will embody the rules that he himself imposes, but we all know this. Every dad knows that this is the danger. Every dad knows that hypocrisy is the trap, because he knows that he himself is not the man he wants to be. Every dad here on this Father's Day, every man knows that he is not himself yet the man he wants his sons to be. He's not the person he wants his children to be. And then he knows that someday they're going to find this out. At some point, they're going to discover that I am not the person, I'm not as good as I want them to be. I'm not as brave as I want them to be. I'm not as honest as I want them to be. I'm not as holy as I want them to be. And think, sometimes it seems like part of adolescence seems to be the realization that dad doesn't live up to the ideals that he set for the rest of us. In that moment, the shepherd, in that moment, the father can't let that stop him. Why? Because his kids still need shepherds. Because this world still needs shepherds. Because kids still need a dad. Kids still need moms and dads who are willing to say, here's how you can be better than me. I shared this before, because we'll all fail. That's not the point. The point isn't being perfect moms or perfect dads. The point isn't being perfect Christians or perfect shepherds. The point is, I want my children to be better than I am. I know I've shared this before, but every one of my siblings and I, we were on the swim team ever since we were about 6 years old. And we had to be. It wasn't just swim lessons. We had swim lessons at little kids, but my mom made us. It was not a matter of, this is not an option, this is something you're going to do. You're going to be on the swim team for a couple of years, in fact. And the reason why is because my mom knows how to swim. She took swim lessons. But my mom is afraid of the water. I remember she signed up for a triathlon at one point. It wasn't a very long swim, maybe like a 500-meter swim in a lake. And she trained and she actually didn't complete the race because she was out in the lake and she just got scared and panicked, all the waves and everything coming against her, and she panicked and she didn't finish. And my mom put us all in swim team because she said, I don't want my kids to be afraid in the way that I'm afraid. I want my kids to be better than I am. See, the traps, the danger of being immature and not embodying the rules that you impose, and the danger of being a hypocrite and saying, actually don't live up to the thing I want you to live up to, that can't stop us, because if it's actually not about ourselves, but it's about the kids, then we still have to say, no, I want you to be better than I am. And it's worth pushing for. It's worth setting that up and worth giving your kids a chance to be better than you. I think that's what a mature parent does. I think that's what a mature father does. I think that's what a mature shepherd does. That's the first two dangers, right? Being immature and hypocrite. Yet the third danger is being an impotent father, an impotent shepherd. What does that mean? Well, St. Peter writing to the Christians, and he's saying, listen, he says, your opponent, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So resist him solid in your faith. There's an attack. Basically, if you're going to be a shepherd, your opponent, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. If you're going to be a father, the parent, if you're going to be a Christian in this world, your opponent, the devil, prowls like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. So resist him solid in your faith. Years ago, I had a buddy who shared this with me. He was watching some kind of National Geographic TV show or whatever, documentary on the life of lions. And he was talking about how in this pride of lions, there's the young male lions, and at some point, the young male lions they're gonna test themselves. They're gonna try to be the leader of the pack, leader of the pride. So these male lions would fight against each other. And the commentator noticed this. He said, note that these young lions, they're not trying to kill the other one. They're not going for the face to try to disfigure the other lion. They're not going for the jugular to try to kill the lion. What they're trying to do is they're trying to actually castrate the other lion. They're going for the genitals of the other lion. And that just struck me as so interesting. Why would they have to do that? Why wouldn't they just try to kill him? Well, the reality is, one lion knows, they both know, that if I can render the other lion impotent, he's no longer a threat. If I can take away his power to generate, he's no longer a threat. If I can castrate this other lion and make him powerless, he's no longer a threat. And think about this is how Satan works. This is how Satan works in the lives of so many human beings, but in the lives of so many men. This is absolutely so important. One of the reasons why fathers have not been the fathers they're called to be is because of what we know is a plague, it's an epidemic, it's the plague of pornography. And what that does, essentially, it promises this illusion of potency, right? It promises this illusion of attractance, this illusion of generation, but it just renders a person impotent, powerless. It doesn't have to be pornography, it could be anything. It could be the dad who spends his life on his hobbies. It could be the shepherd who spends his time on himself. It could be the Christian who, rather than taking this power, this strength, this competence, and placing that at the service of others, just turns it in on himself. And simply uses it to bless himself, so to speak. So these three traps, these three dangers: immature fatherhood, shepherding, hypocritical fatherhood or shepherding, and impotent fathering or shepherding. There's a way out of this, and of course it always goes back to looking to Jesus. Not only way out, it goes back to looking to Jesus and saying, we have Jesus who calls us to be meek. Again, not to be weak, but to harness that strength, not to waste our strength on ourselves, not to fear it, not to use our strength for ourselves, but to place our strength in the service of others. There is a power, again, on this Father's Day. Moms, you're so wanted, you're so needed. Single people, yes, we need you absolutely as well. But fathers, we absolutely need fathers to be shepherds, to bless your children. And this is the last thing, the power of a father's blessing. Years ago, I had the chance to sit down, I've shared this before, I had the chance to sit down with an exorcist. And he just, it was over lunch at one point, he just let me ask whatever questions I wanted to ask about his life as an exorcist. And I was asking about different cases, and at one point he talked about the case of this one young woman. She was maybe 20 or 21 years old. And what happened was, the exorcism was taking a longer time because her father had consecrated her to Satan in the womb, or from a young age. And so as she's being delivered, her father, who she didn't have any contact with, he was repeatedly cursing her from afar. Essentially, he was repeatedly calling upon Satan in some way, I'm not sure how this works, but calling upon Satan to curse his own daughter from afar. He had no contact with her. And so, as often as they would free her more and more and heal her more and more in the rite of exorcism, it was slow going because of this repeated curse. Now, on the sidebar, she was gaining more and more freedom, more and more healing. They showed, the priest who was telling me the story, showed him a picture of her father. It was only like 6 months apart, but his physical demeanor was radically changed. Like from when he began cursing to when he was cursing. In 6 months, his health, his appearance had radically transformed, and he was emaciated. He looked tortured because I asked the priest why, and he said, because Satan doesn't like being bossed around. Satan is the father of lies. He's pride itself. And so, he didn't say he's pride himself, I just said that. He's very full of pride. He said he doesn't want to be told what to do. He's being sent to curse this girl as she's being driven back by the power of Jesus Christ. He was tormenting the guy. Sidebar. So anyways, I'm talking to this priest and I say, wait, that's the power of a father's curse. So what about the power of a father's blessing? And he looked at me across the table and he was like, oh no. So there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. The power of a father's blessing. You might be a father who you're with your kids right now and you can just bless them literally by laying your hands on their head and just say, God bless you in the name of Jesus Christ. You might be a father who has very limited or no contact with your kids, but again, you can still pray for them and say, God, I ask you to please bless my children in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, and the power of your Holy Spirit. The power of a father's blessing will undo that immature fatherhood. The power of a father's blessing can undo the hypocrisy. Sometimes we don't live up to being the shepherds or the people that we're called to be. The power of a father's blessing is a way to not walk in impotence, but to walk in power. Because you have the Holy Spirit of God inside of you. And Jesus, I believe, Jesus looks at our culture right now and he sees all these sons and daughters. All of them, so many of them lost. So many of them fatherless. So many of them without someone to shepherd them. Now, your kids might be fully grown, but you're still their dad. I believe Jesus looks at our world and says, not just we need fathers, not just we need shepherds, not just we need priests, those people who serve all these roles, but Jesus looks at this world and he says, I need you. Moms, I need you to strengthen those men so they can be good fathers. Wives, I need you to love your husbands so they can be good fathers. Kids, I need you to take care of your dad, lift him up so he can be a good father. Grandfathers, look to your sons so they can be good fathers. We need moms and dads. We need brothers and sisters. We need the family. But on this day, we're reminded of the fact that Jesus looks out at this world that is troubled and distressed, like sheep without a shepherd. It reminds us how greatly we need competent generosity. Men who are willing to put their strength at the service of others. How much we need dads.